The council chamber of the Sarathi Dominion was lit in soft amber glow, the high arches of its crystalline walls catching the faint pulse of the starlight beyond. They had gathered again, the elders, those who claimed to remember the wars that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Their voices trembled with the weight of memory, though most of the younger delegates rolled their eyes, too arrogant to understand what history had written in blood. "Do not go near the Sol system," rasped Elder Vare, his long frame shaking as he leaned against his carved staff. His scales, once radiant silver, had dulled to pale ash. "Do not wake them. Humanity was locked away for a reason. They are not like us. They are not meant to return." The chamber hummed with unease. His warning wasn't new. It had been repeated for centuries, passed down like a superstition. The elders never gave the full story, only fragments, enough to chill, but not enough to satisfy curiosity. Humanity had once walked among the stars. That much was known. They had burned bright, expanded too quickly, fought too fiercely. And then, silence. Entire archives erased, systems abandoned, ruins left behind. The Dominion believed humanity destroyed itself, a victim of its own violence. But the elders always shook their heads. "Not destroyed," they whispered. "Sealed." On the opposite side of the chamber, High Minister Orvain smirked, his polished crest reflecting the chamber's glow. Younger, ambitious, he saw fear as weakness. "Elders cling to ghosts," he said, his voice sharp. "If humanity were the nightmare you claim, then why are they nothing more than dust now? Their cradle is silent. Their worlds are empty. Their bones feed the soil of forgotten planets. I say, let us claim what they left behind. Why should we fear shadows?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the younger council members. Resources were running low. The Dominion had stretched its influence across the stars, but expansion meant hunger, and hunger drove risk. The Sol system was rich, untouched for millennia, glittering with abandoned technologies that scouts claimed still lingered beneath ruins. Forbidden territory meant opportunity. The elder struck his staff against the floor, the sound echoing like a crack of thunder. His eyes, clouded with age, burned with sudden fire. "You are fools. Humanity is not gone. They are waiting. Do you not understand? They were sealed because they would not stop. They cannot stop. You will awaken something you cannot put back to sleep." Orvain leaned forward, a predator's grin curling his lips. "Or perhaps we awaken power. Perhaps we take what was theirs, and with it, we become greater than even you old ghosts imagined. Why should the Dominion tremble at the memory of savages?" Savages. The word rang cold in the chamber. The vote came quickly. The elders stood opposed, their warnings carved with desperation into every word. But they were few. Their voices, outweighed by the younger, hungrier generation. And so it was decreed. The Sol system would be opened. Humanity's grave would be disturbed. From the observation deck of the Dominion flagship, Admiral Kaith watched the blue shimmer of the Sol Gate unravel into existence, a dark hole yawning open in the void, leading to a star system untouched for ages. Reports claimed the third planet, Earth, was scarred but still intact. No signals, no traffic, only silence. "Like a tomb," one of his lieutenants muttered. Koth said nothing. He had heard the warnings too, though he'd dismissed them as old fear-mongering. Still, something about the sight unsettled him. Silence had weight, and this silence pressed on the chest like a stone. The fleet slid into orbit around Earth. Cities lay in ruins, overgrown with forests, swallowed by oceans. Towers stood like broken teeth against the horizon. The planet was alive, thriving in its own way. But there was no trace of its builders. The first expedition team was sent down. They found relics, machines buried beneath vines, weapons rusting yet still humming faintly with power. They found libraries encoded in strange symbols, sealed vaults humming with energy no one understood. And deeper still, beneath the crust of the planet, they found something else. Not ruins, not technology, something that was not meant to be opened. A chamber sealed in steel and bone, alive with dormant signals. Symbols burned into the walls, warnings carved not in Sarathi tongue, but in the harsh, angular marks of humanity itself. Do not open. Do not wake. Do not let them rise. The message repeated again and again. But ambition does not listen. Orvain himself ordered the chamber breached, standing proud as ancient seals cracked and the first hiss of long-forgotten air spilled into the caverns. And in that moment, deep beneath the earth, something stirred. Keith felt it before he understood it. The air thickened. The silence shifted. The stars outside seemed dimmer, as if something vast had drawn breath after millennia of sleep. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was waiting. The first breach was not dramatic. No explosion, no roaring fire, no wave of energy to sweep the cavern clean. It was quieter than that, and far more unsettling. When the last of the alien seal cracked open, the ancient chamber simply exhaled, a long, shivering breath of stale air that smelled of rust, ozone, and something faintly metallic, like dried blood. Admiral Keith stood at the edge of the cavern with his escort, watching from behind the protective shields as Orvain strutted forward like a conqueror returning to a battlefield. The High Minister's crest gleamed under the dim light of the excavation drones. His robes were immaculate, untouched by the sweat and grime of labor. He didn't belong down here. He belonged in the chamber above, scheming, smirking, twisting words to bend others to his will. But now he had come to see his triumph with his own eyes. "This is it?" Orvain asked, his voice loud and mocking, as if trying to drown out the suffocating silence of the chamber. "This is the great horror we were warned against? A hole in the ground and dust in the air? Pathetic." No one answered him. The soldiers kept their eyes forward, weapons tight in their grips. The excavation team shifted nervously, tools humming faintly, their lights cutting weak arcs through the darkness. Keith had spent most of his life staring into the void of space. He had seen stars die, planets split apart, fleets reduced to debris in seconds. He knew fear, though he did not easily admit it. But this place, it felt different. This was not the fear of being outgunned or outmaneuvered. This was older, heavier, the kind of fear that seeped into the marrow and whispered, "You should not be here." The inner chamber yawned open before them, vast and circular, walls lined with black stone carved in angular patterns that hurt the eyes if you stared too long. At its center was a cradle of machinery, long dormant but not dead. Thin cables like veins ran into the ground and vanished deeper into the planet. In the middle of it all, a sphere rested within a lattice of metal arms. The surface of the sphere was dark and pitted, but faintly alive. Pulses of dim red light throbbing under its surface in slow, rhythmic beats. "Power source?" one of the engineers whispered. "No," Keith said, his voice low. He didn't know what it was, but his gut twisted at the sight of it. "Not power. Something else." Orvain laughed, the sound too loud, bouncing off the stone walls. "The elders warned us of this? A glowing rock." He turned to Keith, eyes flashing with arrogance. "Mark this day, Admiral. History will remember it as the day we broke superstition. There is no monster sleeping here. There is only relics, and relics are meant to be claimed." Keith's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to order the chamber sealed again, but the chains of command wrapped tight around his throat. He was a soldier. Orvain was the minister, The Dominion had already voted. Still, unease gnawed at him. The engineers approached the sphere, scanners humming, beams of light passing across its surface. Strange glyphs flickered to life wherever the beams touched, glowing faint blue before fading again. The engineers muttered to each other in confusion. No recognizable language, no clear code. And then, for the briefest moment, one of the glyphs changed. It wasn't alien. It wasn't unreadable. It was human. 3 words burned across the sphere, clear in the Dominion's universal translation system. Do not wake. The scanners went dead. Every light in the chamber flickered, then dimmed. The only illumination left was the pulse of red light within the sphere, and now it was faster, stronger, a heartbeat accelerating. Keith felt the weight of the silence shift again, pressing harder, crushing the lungs. The soldiers raised, their weapons, fingers hovering over triggers. The engineers stumbled back, faces pale, their instruments sparking uselessly in their hands. "Admiral," one of his lieutenants whispered. Keith opened his mouth to give an order, but Orvain's voice cut through first, dripping with contempt. "Do you see? Tricks, nothing more. The humans played with theatrics, and you all cower like hatchlings." He stepped closer to the sphere, ignoring the shouts of warning from the soldiers. "This is power, and power belongs to those willing to take it." He reached out. Keith moved before he could think, crossing the distance in 2 strides. His hand clamped down on Orvain's arm, yanking him back hard enough that the minister stumbled. "Don't touch it." Keith's voice was low, almost a growl. Orvain's eyes blazed with fury at being manhandled, but before he could spit his outrage, the sphere pulsed violently. The chamber roared alive. The walls shook, the floor trembled, lines of red light erupted along the black stone, crawling outward like veins filling with blood. The heartbeat became thunder, rattling bones, drowning thought, and then voices. Not Sarathi, not alien. Voices in a language Keith didn't know but somehow understood all the same. Human voices, overlapping, whispering, screaming, chanting. Fragments of rage and grief, hope and fury, tangled together into a single echo that clawed at the mind. "We are not gone. We are not silent. We are waiting." Keith staggered, clutching his head. Around him, soldiers shouted, some firing wildly into the walls, others collapsing under the weight of the sound. The engineers fled toward the exit, only to slam against sealed doors that had locked themselves shut. Orvain stumbled back, his arrogance cracking for the first time. What is this?" Keith forced his eyes open. The sphere was splitting. Thin cracks spread across its surface, glowing brighter and brighter until it was blinding, and within that light, shapes moved. Not machines, not energy, something else. The chamber was not a tomb. It was a womb. The thing inside was waking. Hours later, or maybe minutes, Keith couldn't tell, the chamber was silent again. The sphere was gone. Or rather, it had opened, its shell scattered across the floor like the remains of an egg. The lattice that had held it was torn apart, melted from within, and the red light was gone, replaced with something colder, sharper. A figure stood where the sphere had been. Not alien. Not Sarathi. Human. It was male. Tall, broad, skin pale as moonlight, eyes dark and bottomless. He wore no armor, no clothing, only the remnants of some strange suit that looked grown, not woven. His chest rose and fell slowly, deliberately, as if testing the act of breathing after too long without it. Every Sarathi in the chamber froze. No one moved, no one dared. The human lifted his head, scanning the room with slow precision. His gaze lingered on the soldiers, on their trembling weapons, then on Orvain, who had collapsed to his knees, his crest pressed flat in terror. Finally, Those dark eyes landed on Keith. For a long moment they stared at each other. Keith's heart hammered in his chest, but he didn't look away. He couldn't. There was something in that gaze, something that felt like recognition, not of him, personally, but of his kind. A soldier. A warrior. The human spoke. The voice was low, raw, but clear. The words came in the Dominion's tongue, though Keith knew instinctively they were not meant to. Who woke me? Orvain scrambled to his feet, desperation driving him forward. I did. I freed you. The human raised a hand. Orvain froze, mid-word, his body locking rigid. His eyes bulged, his throat convulsed. But no sound came. Slowly, his body lifted off the ground, hanging in the air like a puppet with invisible strings. The human's head tilted, studying him like one might study an insect. Then his hand closed into a fist. Orvain's body snapped like brittle wood. Bones shattered, blood sprayed, the pieces collapsing in a heap at the human's feet. No one spoke. No one moved. The human lowered his hand, turned his gaze back to Keith, and said almost calmly, "You should have listened." Keith swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at him to run, to fight, to do something. But all he could do was stand there, staring at the first human to rise in millennia, and realize the truth. The elders had not exaggerated. They had underestimated. Humanity was awake, and the galaxy was doomed. The chamber had become a tomb again, but this time, the dead were not the ones sleeping. Orvain's remains were scattered across the floor, his blood pooling in the cracks of ancient stone. No one rushed to him. No one dared. The silence that followed his death was not relief, but dread. Every Sarathi in that chamber had realized, in a single, brutal heartbeat, what the elders had meant. The human didn't move for a long while. He simply stood there, breathing, his dark eyes roaming the cavern as if reacquainting himself with the world. The faint hum of the machinery around him seemed to answer to his presence. Lights flickering awake, systems long dead now trembling with life. Admiral Keith couldn't look away. There was power in the man's stillness, a weight that pressed down harder than any weapon, and yet it wasn't only power. There was memory in him, rage buried beneath patience, the sense of something vast held tightly in check. Finally, the human spoke again. "Where am I?" The words rolled like stone, low and heavy. They weren't asked with curiosity, but with expectation, as if he already knew but wanted to hear it from someone else. Keith forced his voice steady. "The Sol System, planet Earth." For the first time, something flickered in those dark eyes. Recognition, but not relief. More like confirmation. He nodded once, then turned his gaze toward the soldiers. They flinched, tightening their grips on their weapons. Keith raised a hand. "Hold!" he snapped, his command voice cutting through their panic. He didn't know if their rifles would matter at all against this thing. The thought of firing now felt like suicide. The human walked slowly to the broken remnants of the sphere, crouched down, and touched a shard of its shell. His fingers lingered on it, and for a moment he looked almost mournful. Then he whispered words Keith couldn't understand, old words, human words, their meaning lost to time. The shard dissolved into ash at his touch. Keith's breath caught. The human stood again, taller now, stronger, as if with every second he was remembering himself. His gaze settled on Keith once more. "You are not my enemy," he said, voice flat. "Not yet. But you woke me, and now they will wake too." "Who?" Keith asked before he could stop himself. The human didn't answer. He simply turned, walking toward the sealed doors. With a wave of his hand, the thick slabs of metal screeched open, their locks tearing apart like paper. He stepped through without another word, vanishing into the dark corridor beyond. The silence he left behind was unbearable. Keith exhaled slowly, his chest tight. Around him the soldiers shifted, some staring at the ruined body of Orvain, others frozen in fear at the memory of the human's power. "Admiral," his lieutenant whispered, voice trembling. "What do we do?" Koth didn't know. For the first time in his career, he had no strategy, no plan, no chain of command to lean on. Orvain was gone. The Dominion Council was light years away, and the thing that had just walked out of the chamber was unlike anything they had prepared for. But he knew one thing. "We get back to the ship," Keith said. "Now." The Dominion flagship Veros hung in orbit above Earth, its silver hull gleaming against the blue and green planet below. On the bridge, officers moved quickly, tension sharp in the air. Reports from the excavation site poured in, interference, comms failures, energy surges spreading across the planet. The planet that had seemed dead hours ago now pulsed with strange readings, as if the entire crust was waking. Koth strode onto the bridge, his cloak torn and dust-streaked, his soldiers trailing behind him in silence. Every officer turned, questions burning in their eyes, but one look at his face kept them quiet. "Status," Keith demanded. The sensor chief bowed her head. "Admiral, seismic activity detected across all major continents. Energy signatures rising from multiple points. They're identical to the one found in the chamber." Keith's blood ran cold. Not one, many. "How many?" 7 confirmed, possibly more. The bridge seemed to shrink around him. Orvain had thought himself bold for breaching one seal. But humanity had not locked away just one of its kind. It had buried entire legions. The Bee elders had begged them not to disturb even one. And now 7 were stirring. "Get me the Dominion Council," Keith ordered. The comms officer shifted uneasily. "Sir, there's interference. Something on the planet is jamming long-range communication. We can't reach beyond this system." Keith's hands curled into fists. They were cut off, alone, and Earth was no longer silent. Hours passed like decades. Reports came from the ground. Screams, static, then silence. Whole squads vanished. Scouts sent to the ruins of other cities never returned. Orbiting drones picked up strange bursts of light, impossible movements in the shadows of skyscrapers that had been dead for centuries. Then the first images arrived. Keith stood over the hollow table, watching the grainy footage recorded by a soldier's helmet before it cut off. It showed a ruined city, vines and moss swallowing the towers. The squad moved carefully, weapons raised, when the ground split beneath them. From the fissure, something climbed out. Not one human. Dozens. Their bodies were pale, their eyes burning with unnatural light, their movements too fast, too precise. They did not stumble or hesitate. They surged forward like predators. The soldiers screamed, fired, but their weapons barely slowed the oncoming tide. The footage ended with a blur of teeth, eyes, and claws. Then nothing. Keith turned away from the hollow, jaw clenched. The officers around him whispered in terror. One voice finally spoke up. "Admiral, what are they?" Keith didn't answer. He remembered the human's words in the chamber. Now, they will wake too. He realized then. The sphere had not created him. It had preserved him. It had preserved them all. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had been put to sleep. Entombed not out of mercy, but out of fear. And now the tombs were opening. The fleet tried to leave. Keith gave the order himself, his voice steady, though his gut twisted in knots. "Prepare the jump drive. Get us out of the system, now." Engines roared, the massive ship trembling as power surged into the jump core. The stars began to distort on the view screens, light bending as the gate prepared to open. And then, nothing. The ship shuddered violently, alarms shrieking. Systems flickered, died, came back weakly. "Admiral!" the chief engineer shouted. "Something's blocking the drive. We can't jump." Keith gritted his teeth. "What do you mean, blocked? By what?" The engineer's face was pale. By the planet, sir. It's broadcasting something. A field. It's locking us in." Keith turned to the view screen, staring at Earth below. The oceans glimmered with unnatural light, veins of energy crawling across the continents like scars. The planet itself was alive again, and it was not letting them leave. Humanity had not just awakened. It had trapped them. The first wave hit the fleet before they could regroup. Human ships rose from Earth's atmosphere, ancient and scarred, but burning with impossible energy. They weren't sleek like Dominion craft. They were brutal, jagged, built for war in a way that felt primal. They moved faster than their size allowed, their weapons tearing through shields like they weren't there. Koth's bridge shook as the Veros took the first hit. Sparks showered from the ceiling, consoles exploding. Officers screamed, scrambling for control. "Return fire!" Koth roared. The fleet answered, beams of light cutting through the void, missiles streaking toward the enemy. But the human ships danced through it, weaving, twisting, retaliating with merciless precision. One Dominion cruiser exploded in a blinding flare, its pieces scattering like ash. Another was split clean in half. Keith gripped the rail of the holotable, forcing his voice steady. "Focus fire on one target, bring it down!" The Veros and two surviving ships turned their guns on a single human vessel. For a moment, it worked. Shields flickered, hull cracked. But then the ship's core pulsed with red light, and it surged forward, ramming one Dominion destroyer head-on. Both ships vanished in fire. Koith's stomach dropped. These weren't random attacks. These weren't beasts. This was coordinated, calculated. Humanity wasn't stumbling out of the dark. They were fighting with memory, with strategy, and the Dominion was losing. Hours bled into chaos. The fleet was shattered, scattered survivors fleeing into the debris fields. The Veros limped through the wreckage, half its systems crippled, smoke choking the corridors. Koth stood on the bridge, blood running from a cut across his forehead, his cloak torn to ribbons. "Admiral," his lieutenant rasped, coughing through smoke. "We can't win this. What do we do?" Keith stared at the view screen. Earth filled it, vast and alive, glowing with veins of light that spread farther every hour. The human ships hovered like predators, waiting, watching. And on the surface, Keith knew more were waking. Thousands. Millions. His fists tightened. There was no winning. The elders had been right. This wasn't a war. This was survival against something that should never have been disturbed. But survival meant understanding. He remembered the human's eyes, the way he had looked at Keith. Not with hatred, but with recognition. Not all Sarathi were his enemy. Not yet. Keith knew what he had to do. "We go back," he said quietly. The officers stared at him in disbelief. "Back," his lieutenant repeated. "Back to Earth? Sir, that's suicide." Keith's eyes were hard. "No, it's the only chance we have. They've trapped us here. If we want to survive, if we want to understand what they are, what they want, we have to face them. We don't run, we can't. Not anymore." The bridge fell silent. Outside, the ruins of the Dominion fleet drifted in the void. And below, Earth pulsed with life, whispering promises of fury and vengeance. Keith straightened, wiping blood from his face. "Set a course," he said. "We're going back down." And in his gut, he knew. Humanity had not simply returned. Humanity was reclaiming everything, The galaxy had ignored the Elders. Now it would pay the price. The descent back to Earth was nothing like their first landing. The Veyros, crippled and burning, entered the atmosphere like a wounded beast. Plasma peeled from its hull, the engines groaned, and half the ship's stabilizers were gone. Koth stood on the bridge, gripping the railing so tightly his claws dug into the metal. Around him, his crew worked in grim silence, their eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. "Keep her steady," Koth barked. The helmsman nodded, sweat glistening on his scaled forehead. "Trying, Admiral. She doesn't want to fly." The ship rattled violently as it tore through the clouds. Below, the planet stretched vast and alive. Where once the scans had shown only ruins, now the land glowed with veins of red and white light. Whole forests burned with unnatural energy. Rivers shimmered like molten silver. And the cities, the dead cities, had changed. The towers that had been broken teeth now stood taller, their wounds knitting together with black steel and glowing circuitry. Machines moved across the landscape, rebuilding at impossible speed. The planet was repairing itself, healing as if it were alive. And at its heart, Kaith knew, humanity was the blood flowing through those veins. Prepare for impact. The Veyros crashed through the remains of an old coastal city. The landing tore a crater into the earth, waves of dust and debris erupting around the wreck. The ship shuddered to a halt, its hull screaming in protest. Sparks rained down, fires burned along the corridors, but the vessel held. Barely. Kaith staggered to his feet. His body ached, blood trickled down his jaw, but he was alive. He scanned the bridge. Half his officers were gone, dead in the crash or too broken to move. Those that remained looked to him with the same question in their eyes. What now? Kaith straightened, his voice firm despite the weight crushing his chest. "We move. Gather weapons, supplies. We'll form a perimeter outside. If this ship becomes our tomb, I'd rather meet death under the open sky." The survivors obeyed, silent but swift. They had no strength left for argument. The air outside was heavy, thick with humidity and something else. Something sharp that stung the lungs, like breathing in lightning. The city stretched around them, vast towers clawing at the sky, their jagged edges glowing faintly as if veins of fire ran through them. Nature had grown wild here, trees twisting around steel, vines pulsing faintly with light. And everywhere, the ruins hummed. The planet was alive, and it was watching. Kaith led the survivors into the shadow of a shattered tower, weapons ready. He had chosen his most trusted, Lieutenant Drevos, scarred and grim, Corporal Heth, young but sharp-eyed, and 3 soldiers who had survived the excavation. 6 of them in total, barely a squad. As they moved through the streets, Kaith couldn't shake the feeling that the city was breathing. The walls trembled faintly under his hand. The ground pulsed as though a heartbeat deep beneath the stone. "Admiral," Drevos muttered, his voice low, "this place is wrong. We shouldn't be here." Kaith grunted. "We don't have a choice." They turned a corner, and then they saw them. Humans, not 1, not 2. Dozens. They stood at the end of the street, blocking the path, their pale forms glowing faintly in the dim light. Some wore remnants of old armor, fused with strange machinery. Others carried weapons Kaith didn't recognize, rifles that seemed alive, blades that pulsed with red fire. Their eyes burned, each one a dark star. The Sarathi froze. The humans didn't charge. They didn't scream. They simply stood, watching. The silence was heavier than any roar of battle. Then one stepped forward. It wasn't the same man from the chamber. This one was broader, his skin scarred, his jaw hard as stone, His voice was deep, rumbling like thunder. "You woke us." Keith forced his chin high. "We were told not to." The human's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile. "And yet, here we are." The squad shifted uneasily, fingers tight on triggers. Keith raised a hand, keeping them steady. He could feel it. If they fired now, they wouldn't live long enough to regret it. "What do you want?" Keith asked. The human's eyes narrowed. "To finish what was started." Keith frowned. What was started? The human's gaze swept across the ruined city, then back to Keith. "Survival, expansion, dominion. You think your people rule this galaxy now, but we were here before you, and we will be here after you." Drevos hissed under his breath. "They're mad." Keith silenced him with a glance. He turned back to the human. "The Dominion thought you destroyed yourselves." At that, laughter rippled through the humans. Bitter, sharp. "Destroyed ourselves?" the leader said. "No, we were caged, locked away because the others feared us, feared what we could become." He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "And they were right." Keith held his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to retreat. He could see it in this man's eyes, unshakable certainty, the kind of resolve that didn't bend, didn't break. "What happens now?" Keith asked. The human smiled. It was not kind. "Now?" He spread his arms wide, and behind him, the others stirred, their weapons humming, their voices rising in a low chant. "Now, we rise, and the galaxy remembers." They didn't kill Keith. That perhaps unsettled him more than anything else. The humans let him and his squad live, herded them through the ruins like cattle, but never striking. They moved with purpose, not cruelty. Every step deeper into the city revealed more of their awakening. Vaults cracked open, releasing men and women who stumbled out, their bodies pale and trembling, but their eyes already alive with fire. Machines stirred in the streets, hulking constructs that moved on all fours like beasts, their armor scarred but functional. Towers lit with red veins, transmitting signals across the sky. It wasn't chaos. It was rebirth. Keith realized then that the humans weren't simply waking as individuals. They were waking as a people. Entire cities were coming back to life. Entire armies. And Earth was only the beginning. They brought Keith to a chamber deep within the city's heart. It was vast, cathedral-like, lit by red fires burning without fuel. At its center stood a figure Keith recognized instantly. The man from the excavation chamber. The first to wake. He stood on a raised platform, his presence commanding, his gaze sweeping across the gathered humans like a general addressing soldiers. When his eyes met Keith's, something cold and inevitable passed between them. "You," the human said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like a blade sliding from its sheath. "The one who stopped the minister from touching the seal." Keith's throat tightened. "Yes." The human descended the steps, each stride echoing. He stopped before Keith, studying him with unnerving intensity. "You understand," he said. "Not all of it, but more than most of your kind. You felt it, didn't you? When we woke." Keith swallowed. He wanted to deny it, but the truth burned in his chest. He had felt it. The shift, the weight, the inevitability. "Yes," he admitted. The human nodded slowly. "Then you know why resistance is pointless. You cannot stop what has begun. None of you can." Keith forced his voice steady. "If you rise, you will bring war to the entire galaxy. Billions will die." The human's eyes darkened. "Billions already have. Do you think the stars were kind before we slept? Do you think peace ruled when we were gone? No. War is constant. Death is constant. The only difference is who survives to tell the story. Kaith clenched his fists. And you intend it to be humans. The human's lips curved in a thin, merciless smile. It was always meant to be humans. That night, if it could be called night, for the sky above glowed with red veins and storms, Kaith sat with his squad in the ruins of what had once been a marketplace. The humans hadn't killed them. They hadn't even locked them up. They had simply left them there, under the watch of pale sentries who never blinked. "They're going to burn everything," Drevos muttered, staring into the fire they had built. "Everything we know, and we can't stop them." Heth's voice shook. "Why let us live? Why not kill us like the minister?" Kaith stared into the flames, the human's words echoing in his skull. "You understand. They want us to see," he said quietly. "They want witnesses, so when the galaxy falls, someone can say they were warned." Silence fell over the squad. Above, the city pulsed with light. In the distance, Kaith could hear machines moving, humans chanting, the heartbeat of a world that was no longer dead. He knew then that the Dominion was finished. The elders had been right. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had been waiting. And now, nothing could stop them. The Dominion Council chamber had never been so loud. Voices clashed like weapons, 100 delegates shouting over one another, their crests raised in panic. The holodisplays flickered above them, grainy recordings from the shattered fleet near Sol playing on repeat. They showed Dominion warships torn apart in moments, human vessels rising from the atmosphere like ghosts of war, and the impossible sight of Earth glowing with veins of fire, pulsing like a living thing. "Fabrications!" one delegate screeched, though his voice shook with disbelief. "They're tricks, old recordings made to terrify us." "They're real!" another roared, slamming her claws against the table. "I lost 3 fleets. My own blood was on those ships. Do you dare call their deaths a trick?" The High Speaker of the Council bellowed for order, but his voice was drowned out in the chaos. The chamber stank of fear. It was not the fear of politics, of rival factions, or of losing influence. This was older, deeper, the kind of fear that stripped all titles away and left only survival. At last, Elder Vare rose. The chamber stilled, not out of respect, but out of dread. The elders had warned them for centuries. The council had laughed, mocked, ignored, but now no one laughed. "You see," Vare rasped, his old voice carrying farther than any of the shouting had. "You see what your arrogance has done. We told you. Do not disturb them. Do not wake them. Humanity was sealed for a reason." The speaker turned toward him, his crest trembling. "What are they truly? What did you keep from us?" The elder's eyes clouded, his scales dull. "They are us, but hungrier, smarter, stronger. We are predators, yes, but humans devour predators. They do not stop when they win. They stop when there is nothing left to take. That is why the old ones sealed them away, not for mercy, but for fear of what they would become if left unchecked." The chamber fell silent, his words striking harder than any weapon. Then, from the shadows, a younger counselor whispered what everyone feared. "Then we are already doomed." Back on Earth, Admiral Koth did not sleep. The humans did not keep day and night. Their rebuilt cities glowed constantly, red veins lighting the ruins, machines grinding ceaselessly as towers rose from rubble. The sound never stopped. It was as if the entire world was a war machine awakening piece by piece, and Kaith was trapped inside it. His squad sat near him in the ruins, restless and afraid. Drevos sharpened his blade pointlessly, his hands trembling. Heth stared at the glowing skyline, muttering prayers under his breath. None of them trusted the humans who let them live, and none of them trusted Kaith's silence. He could still hear the words of the first awakened man. You understand. Kaith did not want to understand. He wanted to fight, to resist, to cling to the chain of command that had defined his entire life. But the Dominion was gone. The fleet was ash. His orders were dust, and in the void left behind, only one truth remained. Humanity was not going to stop. The human leader came again that night, the same pale man from the chamber, the one whose gaze had burned through Kaith's soul. He moved without guards, without fear, as if the city itself was his shield. "You've seen enough to know," he said, his voice calm, deliberate. "Your people cannot defeat us." Kaith met his gaze. "Then why am I still alive?" The human tilted his head, studying him. "Because you are useful. You are not like the minister. You listened. You saw. And when the others come, and they will come, you can speak for us." Kaith's jaw clenched. "You want me to be your mouthpiece?" The human smiled faintly. "A bridge, not for peace. There will be no peace, but for survival. Some will bow, others will resist. But all will need to hear the truth from someone they trust. That will be you." Kaith's chest tightened. He had spent his life as a soldier of the Dominion, sworn to defend it with his blood. And now this human was asking him to betray it, to be the herald of its doom. "I am Sarathi," Kaith said coldly. "I am sworn." The human stepped closer, his eyes like black fire. "You are alive. That is all that matters now. Sworn or not, your dominion is ash. The only choice left is whether you will burn with it or stand when the fire dies." Kaith's hand twitched toward his blade. For one breath, he considered striking, driving steel into this pale chest, proving that Sarathi honor still meant something. But he stopped. Not because of fear, but because of certainty. If he struck, he would not succeed. The human was not unarmed. The planet itself was his armor. And Kaith realized, with a hollow ache, that survival mattered more than honor. The Dominion sent reinforcements weeks later. Koth watched from the ruins as their ships broke through the atmosphere, sleek, silver, proud. He almost felt hope stir in his chest. Perhaps the Council had listened. Perhaps they had sent their finest to strike before humanity spread too far. But hope died quickly. The reinforcements never reached the ground. The moment they entered orbit, the skies lit with fire. Human warships rose from the planet like predators leaping from the sea. They tore into the Dominion fleet with feral precision, cutting them apart before they could form a line. The sky rained debris for days. Kath and his squad huddled in the ruins, watching. Streaks of burning metal fall into the oceans. The Dominion had not sent enough. Or perhaps there would never be enough. "They're not fleets," Dravos muttered, his voice raw. "They're sacrifices." Kaith said nothing, but he knew the truth. The Dominion wasn't sending fleets to win. They were sending them to stall, to delay the inevitable, to buy time for the rest of the galaxy to prepare. But no preparation would matter. Not against this. Weeks bled into months. The humans grew. Their armies marched through the cities, their ships multiplied, their machines crawled across continents, remaking the planet in their image. Earth no longer looked like ruins. It looked like a fortress, and the Sarathi survivors, Kaith and his squad, were no longer prisoners. The humans treated them like shadows, ignored but never dismissed. Kaith realized why. They wanted him to see. They wanted him to carry the story. Every night, Kaith lay awake, torn between rage and awe. He wanted to hate them, for the fleets they had destroyed, for the Dominion they had doomed. But part of him felt something darker, something more dangerous. Respect. The humans were everything the Sarathi pretended to be, unyielding, ruthless, unstoppable. They were predators perfected. And Keith, in the hollow silence of night, admitted to himself what he had never said aloud. Part of him wanted to follow them. The day came when the human leader summoned him again. This time Keith was brought to a vast chamber beneath the earth. The walls were lined with machinery older than any Sarathi technology, glowing faintly with red veins. In the center of the chamber stood a massive gate, tall as a mountain, humming with dormant energy. The human gestured toward it. "Do you know what this is?" Keith shook his head. "A door," the man said. "When we were sealed, we sealed ourselves here. But not only here. Every cradle, every world we touched was hidden, waiting. This door will open them again." Keith's breath caught. He understood. Earth wasn't the only tomb. "There are more of you," he whispered. The human's eyes gleamed. "Billions." The chamber roared as the machines awoke, the gate lighting up with blinding power. Keith staggered back, shielding his eyes as a tunnel of light pierced the air. Through it, he saw flashes, worlds covered in ice, deserts glowing with hidden cities, fleets buried under oceans, all of them waking. Keith's knees nearly buckled. The scale was beyond imagining. Humanity was not just returning. They were everywhere. And soon they would rise in every corner of the galaxy. The human turned to him, his voice quiet, final. "You see now, there is no stopping us, only choosing where you will stand when the galaxy kneels." Keith stared into the light, his soul torn apart. For the first time in his life, he felt what the elders must have felt when they begged the council to listen. The weight of inevitability. Humanity was not rising. Humanity was returning, and nothing could stand against them. The galaxy had always known fear. Wars had scarred it, plagues had thinned it, empires had risen and fallen in tides of blood. But this fear was different. It was not the fear of battle, nor of famine or rebellion. It was the fear of inevitability. Reports spread like wildfire. Survivors' recordings, intercepted transmissions, the shattered remains of fleets limping home. Entire systems whispered the same words. Humanity has returned. On 1,000 worlds, panic erupted. Civilizations that had never heard of the humans now spoke of them in dread. Their names etched into legends they thought were only stories. On others, the fear was older, heavier. Cultures who remembered the warnings passed down through generations, who knew that this day might come, and prayed it never would. The Dominion Council fractured, half screamed for immediate retaliation. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon thrown at Saul before humanity could spread. The other half begged for caution, for retreat, for sealing the system off, and hoping the storm would never leave its cradle. And in the middle, the elders sat in silence, their heads bowed. They had no new warnings left, only the bitter truth that their oldest fear had been ignored. Keith watched it all unfold from Earth's shadow. The humans had not stopped growing. Cities once ruined now towered with black steel and pulsing red veins. Machines like titans strode across continents, harvesting, building, arming. Fleets multiplied in orbit, not sleek like Dominion ships, but brutal, jagged, bristling with weapons that glowed like coals. And Keith had seen the gate beneath the earth. He had seen the truth with his own eyes. Earth was only one cradle. Billions more waited to be unsealed. Humanity was not a spark. It was a wildfire, and the galaxy had been drenched in oil for millennia. His squad no longer spoke much. Dravos still sharpened his blade, though Keith suspected it was only to keep his hands from shaking. Heth prayed nightly, his whispers growing more frantic as weeks passed. The others followed Keith's lead in silence, though they watched him with eyes that asked a question none dared voice. "Whose side are you on?" Keith asked himself the same question every night. He had spent his life sworn to the Dominion. But the Dominion was already dying, bleeding fleets into Sol like sacrifices to a god that could not be appeased. And humanity had marked him, not with chains, not with blades, but with something heavier: recognition. He hated them for it, and he respected them for it. That respect gnawed at him more than the fear. The humans summoned him again. This time they did not bring him to a ruin or a chamber beneath the earth. They brought him to orbit, to one of their new ships. The vessel was unlike any Dominion craft. Its hull was jagged, as though torn from a mountain. It pulsed faintly with veins of red, alive, breathing. The interior was no smoother, corridors lined with black steel that seemed to hum with the footsteps of those who walked them. And everywhere, the humans, pale, strong, eyes burning like coals in the dark. Soldiers, engineers, children. They moved with the same calm certainty, as though they had all been born knowing their purpose. At the ship's heart, Keith met the leader again. The same man who had woken first, the same man who had looked into Keith's soul and told him, "You understand. You've seen enough of our rebirth," the human said. "Now you will see our return." Keith frowned. "Return? You've already taken the skies." The man's lips curved faintly. "The skies are nothing. Watch." The ship shuddered as the gate below Earth roared to life. Energy flooded the chamber, blinding light piercing the void. The gate tore open, not to another system in Sol, but to a world far away. Keith recognized it instantly, though he had never been there. A Dominion colony. Through the gate, Keith saw cities, towers, streets bustling with life, and then he saw ships, human ships, surging through the gate like wolves through an open door. Keith's chest tightened. "You're spreading already." The human's gaze burned. Not spreading. Returning. Every cradle will awaken. Every gate will open. We will rise everywhere at once. Your Dominion cannot fight a war on one front, let alone 100. Keith's throat was dry. And those worlds, what happens to them? The man tilted his head. What happens to all prey? The Dominion's colony did not last a week. Keith watched through the ship's viewports as reports came in. Shattered defenses, cities overrun, survivors fleeing into the wilderness only to be hunted down. It was not slaughter for cruelty's sake. It was systematic, efficient, the way predators culled the weak from a herd. And Keith felt his squad's eyes on him again, their fear turning to something sharper. Accusation. "You're letting them use you," Dravos hissed one night. "You're their voice, their witness. Every time they drag you to see their conquests, you carry the story. You carry their warning, and you still stand with them." Keith's jaw clenched. "I stand with survival." Dravos spat. "Then you've already betrayed us." The words cut deep, because Keith knew they were not entirely wrong. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, panic spread. The Dominion Council fractured completely, half its members calling for total war, half demanding retreat, some already abandoning their posts and fleeing to distant, hidden systems. Alliances formed overnight, old enemies suddenly clutching at one another for safety. The Vornik swarm pledged fleets to defend their borders. The Kryn syndicates offered weapons, though for a price steep enough to bankrupt systems. Even the neutral conquered, who had not fought in centuries, mobilized their forces, their cloaked ships appearing in systems where they had not been seen in generations. But it was all desperation. Keith knew the truth. He had seen the scale of what was coming. Humanity was not an empire rising. Empires could be crushed. Empires could be starved, cut apart, strangled slowly over years. This was not an empire. This was nature. It was a flood, a fire, a tide that could not be negotiated with or delayed. And Keith began to wonder if the galaxy's only chance lay not in fighting humanity, but in following them. The elders tried one last time. They gathered in the council chamber, their ancient forms hunched, their voices raw with despair. Elder Vare spoke, though the fire in him had dimmed. "You cannot fight them," he rasped. "You cannot stop them. We sealed them once, but it cost more than you can imagine. It cost worlds. It cost species. It cost pieces of ourselves we never regained. We begged you not to open their tomb, and you did not listen. Now the tomb is open, and you will pay the same price we did. Perhaps worse." A younger delegate slammed his fist on the table. "So what do you suggest, old one? That we bow? That we kneel to savages?" The elder's eyes were hollow. "That you survive, however survival demands." The chamber fell into silence. Keith returned to the ruins that had become home. His squad followed in silence, their eyes still burning with quiet accusation. He could feel the divide growing among them, a fracture he could not repair. Some wanted to run, to find a way off this cursed world and return to the Dominion. Others whispered of fighting, of striking at the humans even if it meant death. Keith said nothing, because in his heart, he already knew. The Dominion was finished, the galaxy was finished, and the only path left was the one the humans carved. That night, as the red glow of the city pulsed against the clouds, Keith stood alone, staring at the skyline. Machines groaned in the distance, towers lit with fire, human ships rising into the skies one after another. He thought of Orvain's arrogance, shattered in a single gesture. He thought of the fleets burning above Earth, the colonies falling one by one, the elders' voices drowned by greed and pride. And he thought of the humans' words. "You understand." Keith closed his eyes, his fists tightening. Yes, he understood. Humanity would not be stopped. The only question left was whether he would burn with the Dominion, or rise with the humans. And for the first time in his life, Keith considered the unthinkable. Betrayal. Above Earth, the first human fleets left orbit. Black ships pulsing with red veins, engines roaring like thunder. They moved with purpose, not to raid, not to test, but to conquer. The galaxy would see them soon, and when it did, it would remember the Elder's warning too late. Do not awaken humanity. But humanity was already awake, and they were coming. The war did not begin with a single battle. It began everywhere at once. Across the galaxy, gates opened, ancient, dormant structures that no Sarathi scientist had ever been able to fully decipher. They flared to life under humanity's hand, linking forgotten cradles to one another, linking soul to worlds thousands of light years away. And from those gates, the humans poured, fleet after fleet of jagged black ships, engines pulsing like hearts, weapons glowing like open wounds. They surged into systems that had thought themselves safe, tearing through defenses with feral precision. Colonies vanished in hours. Outposts burned before they could send warnings. Whole populations were enslaved, culled, or simply erased. The galaxy was not at war. The galaxy was prey. The Dominion tried to resist. Keith heard the reports, carried on broken transmissions, survivors' screams cut short by static. Fleets gathered, massive armadas that once had been symbols of unstoppable power. They met the humans in battle and shattered. At the rim, the 5th Dominion Armada was reduced to wreckage in 3 hours. At the core, the Kryn Syndicate's mercenary fleets were ambushed and torn apart by human raiders who moved faster than any calculation predicted. Even the Concord's cloaked ships, long thought untouchable, were hunted down and gutted by weapons that seemed to see through shadows. Everywhere, the story was the same. Humanity did not merely fight, they adapted, they learned. Every battle lost them ships, yes, but the next battle saw them counter the tactics that had worked before. Their fleets grew sharper, stronger, faster with every engagement, and the galaxy, once arrogant, began to tremble. Kaith stood in the ruins of Earth's new capital, watching the sky as black fleets rose one after another. His squad remained close, though they spoke little now. The divide between them was too wide, their silence heavier than argument. Dravos had not stopped glaring at him since the day Kaith had returned from the human warship. The others were quieter, but their eyes carried the same question. When will you turn against them? Kaith had no answer. The human leader came again, his pale figure like a blade cutting through the shadows. His eyes, black as void, locked on Kaith with that same suffocating weight. It begins, he said simply, gesturing toward the fleets rising into the sky. Soon, the Dominion will send everything it has. It will not matter. Kaith's voice was rough. You cannot defeat everyone, not forever. You will bleed yourselves dry. The human's lips curved faintly, not in humor, but in something colder. Do you still not understand? This is not conquest. This is return. Every gate we open, more of us awaken. Every battle, more of us remember. We do not bleed dry, we grow. And your galaxy has already lost, because it cannot grow as fast as we do. Kaith's chest tightened. Then why keep me alive? Why keep my squad alive? If you don't need us, why not kill us? The man's eyes narrowed. Because you are useful. Because when the time comes, your voice will break more of your people than our weapons ever could. Survival is not always about strength, Admiral. Sometimes it is about doubt. Doubt. The word stung. Koth turned away, but he could not shake it. Weeks later, the Dominion Council made its move. Kaith listened to the intercepted broadcast, his stomach heavy. The Council had declared total war. Every fleet, every soldier, every factory turned toward humanity's annihilation. Old rivals were called into uneasy alliance. The Kryn syndicates, the Vornik swarm, even the Concord, all sworn to fight under a single banner. It was the largest war coalition the galaxy had seen in centuries. Kaith wanted to feel hope, but he had seen too much. He had seen the gates, the hidden cradles, the billions waiting to wake. The coalition might win battles, but not the war. The first great clash came at the Jural Expanse. The Dominion coalition gathered there, over 3,000 ships, vast enough to blot out the stars. They were ready. They were unified. And then the humans came. Kaith watched from the human ship's viewports, his breath caught in his throat. The enemy fleet filled the void, their guns bristling, their formation perfect. And still, the humans charged. They moved like predators in a herd of prey, fast, ruthless, coordinated. Their ships tore into the coalition lines, breaking them apart, scattering them. The coalition fought back fiercely, and for a moment, Kaith thought perhaps, just perhaps, they might hold. But then the gates opened. Not one, not two. Dozens, and through them came more human fleets, more soldiers, more weapons. The coalition's flank collapsed, their rear shredded, their formation turned to ash. The battle became a slaughter. Koth's hands clenched into fists as he watched Dominion ships burn. He saw escape pods torn apart before they could flee, surrendering vessels ignored and gutted, entire squadrons erased in seconds. And through it all, the humans moved with cold precision, their losses forgotten as quickly as they occurred. When it ended, the void was littered with wreckage. The coalition was gone. The galaxy had gambled everything on that one battle. And it had lost. Back on Earth, Kaith's squad broke. Dravos rounded on him, his eyes wild, his blade drawn. "This is your fault," he spat. "You should have killed him when you had the chance. You should have stood with us with the Dominion." Kaith didn't move, didn't flinch. "And then what? I strike him down, and the others tear us apart before we can breathe? You saw what I saw, Dravos. You know." "I know you've betrayed us," Dravos roared. The others moved, weapons raised, voices trembling. The fracture that had festered for months now split open, raw and bloody. Kaith stood firm, his voice cold, sharp as steel. "I've kept you alive. Every day, every choice I've made has been to keep us breathing in a place where no one else could. If you call that betrayal, then so be it." For a moment, the squad hovered on the edge of collapse. Weapons pointed at one another, rage burning in their eyes. Then Heth spoke, his voice hollow. "It doesn't matter anymore. The Dominion is gone. You saw the expanse. We all did. Nothing we do changes that." Silence fell. Weapons lowered. But the fracture remained. Kaith knew then that even if they survived, his squad would never be whole again. The humans pressed their advantage. World after world fell. Colonies vanished. Fleets burned, populations scattered. Refugees flooded into systems that had thought themselves safe, bringing stories of pale soldiers, red ships, cities that rebuilt themselves overnight. And everywhere, whispers grew louder. Perhaps it is better to kneel than to burn. Whole factions broke away from the Dominion, pledging allegiance to humanity in exchange for survival. The syndicates splintered, some turning traitor, others fighting to the last. Even within the Dominion itself, cracks formed. Governors surrendered their worlds without a fight. Soldiers deserted their fleets, and the Council, desperate, began to turn on itself. The human leader came to Kaith once more. "The galaxy falls faster than even I expected," he said, his voice calm, his eyes dark. "Already they kneel, already they doubt. But there are still those who resist, still those who cling to hope. That is where you come in." Kaith's stomach turned. "You want me to be your weapon?" The man nodded. "Not a weapon, a voice. You will speak to them, and they will listen, because they trust you more than they ever will trust me." Kaith's fists clenched. "And if I refuse?" The human's gaze burned into him. "Then you will be forgotten, and your people will burn without your voice to guide them. I offer survival, Admiral. Not for all, no. That is impossible. But for some. For those who bend when the others break." Kaith closed his eyes, his heart heavy. The Dominion was ash. The coalition was broken. Humanity was everywhere, and he knew, deep in his soul, that the choice was no longer between loyalty and betrayal. It was between death and survival. That night, Kaith sat alone, staring at the skyline of Earth reborn. The towers pulsed with red veins, the skies burned with rising fleets, the ground trembled with machines birthing more machines. And he whispered to himself, the words tasting of ash. Perhaps betrayal is all that's left. Above Earth, humanity's fleets spread into the stars, carving paths of fire across the galaxy. The Elder's last warning echoed in the ruins of the Dominion Council Chamber. Do not awaken humanity, but humanity was already awake, and the galaxy was already burning. The galaxy was burning. Kaith could see it in every intercepted broadcast, every broken transmission carried through the human fleets. Systems that had once stood proud now screamed in silence. Planets cracked under. Bombardments. Refugee fleets fled into the void only to be hunted down and scattered like dust. And still the humans advanced. Their fleets multiplied, their armies surged, their gates opened one after another. Every cradle unsealed meant more soldiers, more ships, more fury unleashed into the stars. What had begun in silence was now a chorus of war, echoing across every sector. The Dominion was finished. Its council no longer met in the great chambers of crystal. The halls were empty, its banners burned. The counselors that lived fled into the shadows, some begging for sanctuary from old rivals, others vanishing into exile. A few pledged themselves openly to humanity, their voices breaking as they swore fealty in exchange for mercy. The rest of the galaxy followed the same pattern. Some fought, some bent, some vanished, and Admiral Keith stood in the ruins of Earth, caught between two truths: the oaths he had sworn to the Dominion, and the survival offered by the humans who had let him live when so many others burned. His squad was not whole anymore. Dravos had turned against him, refusing to follow any longer. "You're already one of them," the scarred lieutenant spat, his blade glinting in the red glow of the rebuilt city. "You speak their words. You believe their lies. When they look at you, I see it. They see a tool, not a soldier. And you're too blind to stop them from using you." Keith's reply was sharp, cold. "And what would you have me do? Strike them down? Die screaming in a ruin while the galaxy burns around me? That's not honor, Dravos. That's vanity." The younger soldiers said nothing, but Keith saw the fracture in their eyes. Heth prayed more than he spoke. The others drifted between silence and despair. Their unity had been broken, and Keith knew nothing could repair it. They were soldiers without a cause, shadows clinging to a dead empire. The humans called him again. Keith was led through the towering black spires of Earth's new capital, past machines that walked like beasts, past soldiers whose pale eyes glowed in the firelight. At the city's core, he met the leader once more. The man who had woken first. The one whose gaze had never wavered. "Admiral," the human said, his voice calm, measured. "The time has come. The Dominion still clings to life. A final fleet gathers in the core. They mean to strike at us, one last desperate act. You will speak to them." Keith's jaw tightened. "And say what?" The human's eyes darkened. "Say the truth, that they cannot win, that resistance is death. Offer them survival if they kneel. Tell them the war is already lost." Keith's fists clenched. His blood screamed against the order. He had been Sarathi all his life. He had fought under the Dominion's banners, bled for its fleets, sworn himself to its cause. To stand before its last defenders and tell them to surrender, what was that, if not betrayal? And yet, what was the alternative? The Dominion had no fleets left strong enough to win. Humanity's gates were everywhere. Their cradles were opening faster than the galaxy could count. Billions more were waking with every day. Keith looked into the human's eyes and saw no arrogance, no madness, only certainty, the certainty of a tide. When Keith returned to his squad, Dravos was waiting. "You're going to do it," Dravos growled. His voice shook with rage. "You're going to stand before our people and tell them to kneel." Keith said nothing. "You traitor," Dravos spat. "Better to die with honor than live on your knees." Keith's reply was quiet, heavy. "Better to live. If we die, nothing remains. No memory, no voice, only ash." Dravos raised his blade, fury burning in his eyes. "Then you're already dead to me." The strike came fast, but Keith was faster. He caught the blade, twisted, and drove his own knife into Dravos's chest. The lieutenant's eyes widened, shock breaking through rage. He collapsed in Keith's arms, blood spilling across his armor. The others froze, staring in horror. Keith lowered Dravos gently to the ground. His voice was cold, final. "This is what honor gives you. A grave. If you want survival, you'll follow me. If not, then die." Silence. Heth whispered a prayer, his eyes wet with tears. The others lowered their heads, fear outweighing defiance. The squad was broken. but it was his. The final battle came at the core. Koth stood aboard a human warship as the Dominion's last fleet filled the void before them. Thousands of ships, their hulls gleaming with desperate pride. Banners flew, formations were perfect. This was the Dominion's last stand. On the viewscreen, Koth saw their faces, admirals, captains, soldiers, men and women who had once been his comrades, his brothers, his kin. The humans gave him the channel. "Speak," the leader said. Koth's throat tightened. His chest burned. He stared into the hollow, into the eyes of the Dominion's last defenders. "This is Admiral Koth of the Sarathi Dominion," he began. His voice was steady, though his heart cracked with every word. "I was there when the humans awoke. I saw them rise. I saw our fleets burn. I saw the galaxy fracture. And I tell you now, this war cannot be won." The channel erupted in rage. Voices shouted, cursed, demanded his death. Koth pressed on, his voice cutting through. "I am Sarathi. I swore as you swore. I bled as you bled. And I tell you, resistance is ash. They are not an empire. They are not an enemy we can outlast. They are nature. They are inevitability. And we have no choice left but to survive." He drew a long breath, his voice hard. "Kneel, and you live. Resist, and you die. That is the only truth left." The silence that followed was worse than rage. On the viewscreen, Koth saw it. The hesitation, the doubt, the fracture spreading through the fleet like a crack in glass. Some shouted for defiance, others for survival. Formations wavered, orders clashed, and in that moment of weakness, the humans struck. The battle was not a battle. It was a massacre. Human fleets poured through the gates, black ships tearing through Sarathi hulls like paper. Weapons of red fire split formations apart. Boarding parties stormed ships before their captains could react. The Dominion's last stand broke within hours. Koth watched in silence as his people burned. His voice had done what the humans wanted. It had sown doubt, broken unity, shattered resolve. He had been their bridge. And now the Dominion was ash. After, Koth stood on the bridge of the human warship, staring at the wreckage drifting through the void. His hands shook. His chest felt hollow. The human leader came to his side. "You did well," the man said. His voice was calm, not gloating. "Because of you, they broke faster. Because of you, more will live." Koth turned, fury burning in his eyes. "And how many died because of me?" The human's gaze was cold, unyielding. "They were always going to die. You saved who could be saved. That is survival." Koth's jaw trembled. "Then what am I now? Sarathi? Human? Traitor?" The man's lips curved faintly. "You are alive. That is enough." Koth looked back to the wreckage, his soul torn apart. He had betrayed his people. He had doomed his empire, but he had survived. The galaxy bent. One by one, systems pledged themselves to humanity, some willingly, others at the edge of a blade. The old empires fractured and fell. The council chambers of the Dominion were silent, its banners torn down, its fleets scattered into dust. And above them all, the human fleets burned, black ships with red veins, carrying the tide that no one could resist. The Elder's prophecy had come true. Do not awaken humanity. But humanity was awake, and they would never sleep again. Koth stood in the ruins of what had once been the Dominion's core. The stars burned cold above him, and the human banners flew where Sarathi once had. His squad stood behind him, broken but alive, their eyes still filled with questions he could never answer. He whispered to himself, voice raw, broken, "I was Sarathi. I was Dominion. Now I am nothing." And yet, in the silence, he knew the truth. He was alive. And in the age of humanity, that was all that mattered.